Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Today. We are talking about resilience. Resilience with Christy Cashman, who is the author of The Truth About Horses. That's not necessarily a book directly about horses. It's actually about the tragic loss of somebody's life and how they've been able to overcome that and the love relationship between a father and a daughter. Not only is Christy one of 10 and have overcome significant obstacles to build the success that she's done today, she's also been an educator across the world, teaching people how to overcome mental illness, how to overcome grief, how to overcome loss, to build that success and to build the challenges and the resilience that they have, that they'll build for the rest of their lives and build generational wealth and build generational success. So, Christy, thank you so much for coming. So people know that you've been on American Hustle, you've been on The Forger, you're the proud owner of a golf course that doesn't, and you do not golf in Ireland called Kikia Castle, right? Is that what's called?
Kilkee, yeah. It's
Kilkee
pronounced
Castle
Kilkee.
in Ireland, and
nor does your husband's golf.
And nor does your husband golf, and you are an avid horse lover. So we really appreciate you coming on. We're really excited for this conversation to get to know you and inspire our listeners to what you have to offer.
Thank you. That was quite the intro. I'd say maybe tone it down a little. I have
way.
It's a in reality, I have a mentorship program for teens called You Think, and it's a place for kids 13 to 18 to explore creativity and kind of find their voice in the creative world. That kind of sums it up. But I do appreciate the other superlatives. I don't mind that.
I'm happy. I believe in complimenting, except for to compliment my dad. I believe I'm a realist.
Why don't you compliment your dad?
Why doesn't he? That's a good question. That's another topic for another podcast.
Nice.
We did a podcast.
I am very nice.
You seem nice.
I am very nice.
I don't know. It's a tough debate. All right, let's get right to it. So, Christy, can you give us your origin story? Tell us how you got to where you are today. What inspired you to write this book?
And you moved around a lot.
I did. Well, yeah, pretty much. Not until I was older, though. I mean, let's see. Okay, so I was born in Ohio, one of 10 kids, the 9th of 10. What are you, Yair?
I'm number 4 of 6.
Number 4 of 6. Okay, so we're kind of babies, in the family.
Yes.
And
Yair is far from being the baby of the family.
We're 5 girls, 5 boys. What are you guys?
We're
5 boys, 1 girl.
No way.
Klymans don't make girls, just one. I have five sons and 5 grandsons.
Oh,
and I come from a family of 4 boys.
Wow.
3.5 boys.
No, whatever.
That's similar actually to my family. I have 2 boys. My stepdaughters each have 2 boys. And my son just had a boy.
What do they call you? Or what do they call you as grandma?
That's what I'm trying to figure out. Probably grandma.
Grandma, you're going to stay traditional.
Probably. I don't know.
Make it easy for them.
So what inspired you to get to writing this book?
Okay, so going back, I was born in Ohio. We moved to North Carolina when I was 7, and then lived there until I was. My mom died when I was 17. I stayed another year and a half or 2, then moved out to California to live with my sister. I think it was my mom passing away in a way was gave me a license to leave. Maybe, I don't know, it changed my perspective on life and home, what a home is. And so I left kind of wanting to explore the world, went out to California, lived with my sister, lived there for about a year and a half, and then went to New York with a modeling agency and was there a couple of years, then back in LA, back in New York, where I met my husband who lived in Boston. And now I've been in Boston for most of my life.
And how'd you get the inspiration to write this book? And why did you write the book?
So I am definitely what you would call an avid horse lover and a mediocre horse rider. I used to have a lot more balls, I guess, to
You can say whatever you want. Don't worry.
When I rode when I was younger, I did some amateur steeplechasers, and it was all about galloping fast over fences. And now I'm kind of happy with going on a trail ride. I guess as you get older, or at least I kind of decide that my thrill for being around horses and riding and stuff sort of changes into really just kind of wanting to be around them, wanting to ride, be outside and ride down a beautiful trail and enjoy it that way. But what happened was, I think after my mom died, life just changed. I think your perspective automatically changes when you have that kind of loss, especially when you're a teenager. And it I wouldn't say that I saw that there was a silver lining at all. In fact, I think I was angry for a long time. I probably still am. I think there's a lot of, when somebody has a loss like that, there's a lot of pent up anger because there's no explaining it. And when your world gets turned upside down. And I think that writing my book was a way of processing my feelings around it. And also being able to realize that tragic things can happen in your life, but also beautiful things can happen. And it doesn't have to be one or the other. You just sort of have to be able to accept both.
Yeah, it's very hard to understand loss because it's something that we're not accustomed to, and you only really have to. It's not something that you can have experience dealing with day in and day out. We know doctors who deal with death every single day. That's just part of the conversation. But when they lose a parent, all of a sudden they go into a huge spiral and go into a deep depression. And you would think that they have the experience of death, but they don't really understand when it comes to actually being connected and actually having a physical line with somebody and losing
Mhm.
that physical line. Did you find that you needed to express the book to get over it, or what was the process to heal, or what is that actually? What is the process?
I think maybe the process for me, I can only speak from my, own perspective, is partly recognizing that the relationship with the parent that's passed on doesn't actually go away when they've passed away. Your relationship continues in a different way. And for me, I think a huge reason that I wrote my book was because I felt like my mother was there telling me to do it, and I would see different signs, or I would pick something up very randomly, and it would be, maybe a piece of paper she'd written on, or I'd find an old letter of hers or something. And in some way, shape, or form, I kind of felt her telling me that this was an important book for me to write, an important story for me to tell, And I can tell you the day that I sat in a classroom to get myself motivated to write, I signed up for a bunch of different classes. But the first time I sat in the classroom, I had that feeling that you feel when you feel like you're in the exact right place at the exact right time, doing exactly what you should be doing. And I don't think I'd ever really felt that before. And so I kept feeling that throughout the process of writing, even when I would feel like I was in the weeds of the story, even when I had writer's block and really didn't know what I was doing. Because you're writing, anytime you write, I think even if it's your second, third, fourth book, you're writing in the dark. You don't, you're making it up as you go. You're building the plane as you're flying it. And it's a really strange concept. If you boil it down, you start by writing the first sentence and then trying to cobble together a story that will make people want to read on and turn the page. And I'd had some experience in screenplay writing. I'd done some acting, which is, storytelling. And when I sat down to write this, I actually thought I was writing a treatment to give to a real writer to write a screenplay. But the voice of Reese, the protagonist, came out so clear, and she was so funny and fun to write that I just went with it. I went with her voice, and when I really felt like I had a handle on her and who she was, I planted her in a world that I knew, which is in the horse world. And because I was able to write very solidly around that in terms of, I know that world, it's clear, I think, to any reader that it didn't take a lot of research for me to write the book, and also I could write from loss, and I could write from doing a lot of wrong things because of feeling frustrated. And that's Reese. She's 14 years old and she's had a significant loss and she's very frustrated. And she and her father are emotionally very separated because he's going down his path of grief and she's going down her path of grief, and they're getting further and further away from each other.
But you know about that also. You mentioned you have the mentorship program for teenagers from 13 to 18. Mm-hmm. That happened after the book or before the book? I'm assuming before the book. So that gives you further knowledge about.
No, it actually happened after. I mean, the book was a huge reason the mentorship program happened, was because I realized that how much I could have probably gotten out of a mentorship program if I were, when I was younger, if I'd have started, believed in myself a little earlier about writing and taken some advice that would have helped me along my writing path. I mean, I think everything happens for a reason. So I'm not saying that I wish anything had changed, because I had a lot of different experiences before I started really taking myself seriously as a writer. And all of that is fodder, for writing. I can write about my world of when I was in the modeling world, in New York, and write about my crazy, short stint in LA. And just, those are all great experiences.
I'd like to hear more about the North Carolina and the mountains. That's where you were living.
Well, actually, my next book is called Beulah, and it's based in the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee, which is based on where I grew up in North Carolina. It's called Beulah, and I'm working on that right now. So you'll read it sooner than later.
So one question I really have to ask, I mean, I read a lot of books. I like to read. Mm-hmm. Yair, not so much. As I told you, he cheated on the previous test.
I read part of my book, so that's good.
I read more than you.
I don't know.
I left it on your desk.
David.
Yep.
Where was it? Here?
Yeah, here.
Oh, I didn't even see it.
Well, you can also listen to Audible.
I don't like the Audible so much. I tend to space out a little bit. But I like to read. But I'm wondering, like, all authors read, do they make it up as they go along, or they have something in mind before, like they have like a ending? And
well, you can have something in mind, but the story doesn't really take shape until you start writing it. I mean, I think that some writers start with a really clear outline. Like, they don't actually start writing anything until they have a really clear outline. I started writing, and then I wrote an outline, and then I kept writing, and then I changed my outline, and then I wrote some more and changed my outline again. You can only, if you write, for me, if you're not exploring as you're going, it takes all the excitement out of writing. If you've got this rigid map that you're following, to me, that's like, why even do it? That sounds like science. That's too rigid. That's too,
it's not fun.
Too much structure.
Yeah,
it's too much structure. It doesn't, to me, writing is part spiritual, part bringing in of trying to bring in the actual physical feeling of what the characters are going through, and the description of what they're seeing, and and with all of the senses wrapped up in, and then trying to explain that to the reader. That's the key, I think, to getting readers hooked, is really just describing all the senses that you can, and then put it into a story.
It's interesting because I've written a lot of the horse books also, like with Dick. I think it's Dick Wolf who wrote like a series of jockey books, which are very
about
interesting.
Racing,
about all about racing, but the mysteries with racing. It was like I've read all of his series. I think he's passed away now. I think his son has took over, but he also talks about like a spiritual connection the jockey has with the horse, and it was very fascinating, his approach to how the horses are.
it's not, it's not Dick Wolf, it's somebody else, but I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
I can Google it.
Anyway.
So, Christy, you've been talking about grief and going through mental health, and that's really a big advocate. You're a big advocate for it. What do you think is missing right now in the solution for mental health issues?
I think if I had to say one thing, I'd say passion for something, passion for anything that makes you want to explore life through that lens. I think for me, when I was growing up, that's what horses offered. The world of horses gave me a lens with which to look at life. But then as I grew older, then that passion, that interest, that intrigue, then moved into other areas. But I find us to be in somewhat of a passionless place of, real curiosity about life. Maybe that's just me. I don't know. But, there's a great quote that I've always loved by John Muir, Muir. When you tug at a single thing at life, you find it attached to the rest of the world. It's like if you decided to be passionate about trees, you really wanted to understand trees. There's a whole mystery in everything in nature. Yeah, if you tug at a single thing in nature, you find it attached to the rest of the world. And I love that because you take a tiny little seed and plant it in the ground and you can grow an oak tree. And you really got into learning and discovering what that was all about. That's pretty phenomenal. You take a little egg and it has the perfect temperature and the perfect amount of moisture and or humidity and the perfect amount of time. It hatches into a chicken, a bird, whatever. I mean, these are the kind of things that I guess maybe growing up, how I grew up with a huge family on a small farm. My dad was really into teaching us about nature and how miraculous it is. And I think that for anyone who decides to write anything, you don't have to have the answers as much as you have to be passionate about it. You have to have all the questions. And the questions are what make us, I think, more beautiful beings than thinking that we have all these rigid answers. There's actually something in my book about once you can explain it away, does that take the miracle out of it? I don't think so. Once we can explain away, why are we so busy at always trying to explain things away and check them off the list and say, oh, I understand that. I don't need to know anything more about that. Why is that our goal rather than just always be more childlike about discovery?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's a big problem with people with mental health. They feel like they feel lost. They feel that there's nothing to wake up for. And I love that you're saying passion, because if you're passionate about something, and it could be, and I think that's why horse therapy has become so popular as of like in the last 10 years, because horses have freedom and horses symbolize vulnerability with pure wild but a sense of elegance all at the same time. And I think people can connect to that, and they feel much more free and much more in their own skin, as opposed to people who feel like, let's say they're scared. For younger people, they're scared that they're going to fail a test and the world is going to be over for them, or they didn't get into the college that they wanted to, or they didn't make the right basketball team, and can really spiral people. But I feel connecting to horses just says, you know what, it's not about that. That's so much smaller than what the world really is. We are made to be wild. We are made to be free. Just because we put these rigid barriers on us does not mean that that's really the life that we're supposed to have.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's it's strange that we've allowed ourselves, I guess, to be attached to things that are, I guess, maybe pressure from our society that makes us feel that we have to do this at a certain time or that at a certain time, and that we're not successful unless we have this or that. And I mean, I'm not saying that I think it's a good thing to have goals. I think that's really important. But I also think that when life takes over and does what life does, which oftentimes gets in the way of our goals, is, I think the most important thing is to be able to bend into then the next. Don't let it stop us. Don't let it frustrate, or I guess it can frustrate it, but make the frustration turn into something better, something, another goal that's not so I guess, yeah, rigid. I guess we keep saying that same word.
I mean, from my point of view, it's just, we have to understand we're not in control of everything. We can put things in motion. We can do what we want to do. We have to do our own effort. But then we have to realize sometimes the results are not in our own control. And we have to accept that there's, I don't know what you want to say, but a higher power that runs things, or it's just that, it's not up to us sometimes to, I can make, if I want to do some financial services, business is slow or whatever, I want to make some sales, I can make 1,000 calls, but maybe I'm not going to get anything out of that. So it's frustrating, but I have to realize that, I did what I could do. And there's not much more I can expect from myself, or maybe I have to adjust myself or go with the flow. I'm going to do now, take the next step, try to figure it out, but also not get frustrated or depressed because I'm not getting the results that are out of my control anyway.
Yeah.
It's a hard medium, honestly,
Very hard
to go. What is the toils of man versus what is in God's plan? As you were saying before, it's that you found exactly where you need to be at this exact time. It's a very spiritual concept that's above flesh and blood. That's much deeper. Yeah. And for the people who are listening to understand that, what, if you need it, sometimes it just doesn't work. But if you just let yourself kind of be open to what is happening, and you go for a walk and you walk into a building, you have a conversation, all of a sudden the higher God, you can call it God, you can call it whatever it is, you can call it the universe, you call it karma, you can call it whatever you want to call it, will put you in the place that you need to be at that moment.
It's like what you were saying before, that you felt like in that writing class you were in the exact right spot. And even when it doesn't work out for you, like you don't get the results, it doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't say, you're not, I didn't get these results, so I'm a bad person, and so I should be depressed. That's really not the best attitude.
Well, I think it's because oftentimes it's just for lack of trying, anything that's a challenge it's a challenge because it's difficult, and you don't really grow until you're challenged, and I think that the other thing is that we are in a place right now where I feels like, I don't know, what do you guys think? Do you think that we're in a place right now where people want to be more just comfortable, and they don't really want to be challenged? They don't really want to put themselves out there. I don't know. To me, it feels a little bit like that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. So,
I mean, my father used to say any kind of challenge. My father said if it was easy, everybody would do it.
Yeah, I mean, there are those sayings, and
they have a lot of sayings.
I love the sayings, but they're true.
Look after the pennies, the dollars look after themselves.
Even the clock is right twice a day. No, even a broken clock.
Said that. He never said that.
Oh, okay.
When we were younger, all of my friends were getting color TV, so we only had black and white. So I would say, Dad, everybody's getting color TV. He says, you have color TV, black and white.
But I did, just on a black and white concept, I did actually switch my phone from color on my phone to black and white. I've had it on for almost 2 years.
Brutal.
It's been great.
Really?
It's wonderful.
What does that do?
There's a I took the seminar. I went to the seminar. It was a bunch of like neuroscientists, and they were saying there's football teams of Google, Apple, Facebook and on your phone that are engaging you and using the lights to keep you engaged and keep you more focused on your phone. So you're using it more. And
Wow.
the average person that puts their phone on black and white will use their phone an hour less a day.
I'm going to do
So
that.
it changes everything. I challenge people to do it for 24 hours.
I love it.
It's huge. It also, you get your life. I also tried another hack, which is I limit all social media on my phone to 1 hour a day, and then my phone shuts it off. So I can't even
Wow.
you can
Okay.
technically bypass it.
It's so interesting that you're saying all this, because I just had a conversation last night with my son and my daughter-in-law that about the phone and how addictive it is.
Of course, steals your
And
life.
it totally steals your
And
life.
they have
Very, very intrusive.
They have insane amounts of neuroscientists that know exactly how to make it this intrusive.
It's such a shame. I mean, it really is robbing us of everything. And I made this comment to them yesterday. I said, okay, once my book hits the New York Times bestselling list, I'm getting rid of my smartphone. I'm going back to a flip phone, and I'm going to do all my other stuff on my laptop.
Yeah.
And which automatically is going to limit it more, because we're just so accessible. And the other thing is that, how about, here's the other thing, is that as an artist, as somebody who really wants to be feeling all the time, it totally shuts off the feeling, and it just makes you just absorb and learn a lot of stuff and absorb a lot of things you can't do anything about. So it gives you that helpless feeling. If it's about politics, if it's about, the world affairs, it's very frustrating because you don't feel like you can do anything about it anyway. And there's, I think, so much more damage than good that it's doing for us. I mean, talk about keeping us from connecting. And as I was saying earlier, as an artist, what does everybody do when you're standing in line to get on a plane, standing in line for coffee? We're all on our phones. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to start challenging myself to not be on my phone when I'm in those uncomfortable situations, because as an artist, I should be picking up on what's around me, what's going on, what's happening, that's how you get gestures that you're trying to write about somebody in a different way and use a different kind of a way to describe what they're feeling or thinking or doing. And you miss out on all that.
You miss your life.
Do the black and white. I lasted about 30 seconds. But
Really?
I'm just curious about your acting career. I mean, how does that work? I mean,
Actually, I have a question before that. Sorry. How did you go from being a farmer to becoming a model and then becoming an actress and then becoming a business owner?
She went to LA.
I know that, but like,
New York.
how did you feel? Like, that's not normal. How come you didn't stay with dealing with the chickens when you
I actually still have chickens.
Oh, you still, of course.
I still have chickens.
How much was your sister in LA before you came? Like, how much older is she? You're number 9.
She's 13. She's the oldest sister. She's 13 years older than I am.
Oh, so she's like 30 when you're going out to LA.
Yeah, and she had at the time, let's see, she had 3 kids, and when we got out there, she had her 4th. So
you were her 4th, or
no, she had a 4th baby. Yeah,
that's serious.
So she's probably happy for you to help out.
Well, I helped out a little. I
could have helped out more.
I probably could have.
They always say, oh yeah, my sister's gonna come. She's not waking up in the middle of the night to do the feeding. That's not what she's gonna be doing. I go, is your mom? Yeah, my mom's gonna come and live with us for a month. That sounds terrible. That sounds like a lot of unsolicited advice.
But did your acting career, modeling career start in LA? Is that what happened?
Weirdly enough. So yeah, modeling. What happened is I was living out in LA, and I went to one of those modeling conventions that everybody says don't ever go to because they're a scam. Well, they're actually not necessarily. It's like speed dating if you're interested in getting into the modeling world, because all of I forget what it was called, but this is a long time ago, don't forget. And like like 28 years ago. So it was at a hotel in downtown LA, and all of the modeling agencies had like tables set up, kind of like your speed dating. And you go from table to table, and the agencies will say, I'm interested. Here's my card. Back when people passed out cards, or, not interested. You're not our type. So at that convention, there was an agency that was interested in me from Munich and one in New York. And I packed my bags to go to Munich because that sounded really interesting. And then the agent from New York called and said, look, if you go to Munich, you're just going to be trying to get back to New York. So why don't you come to New York? And for some reason I listened to him and I went to New York. And
is that true? You think that's true in hindsight?
I don't know. I have no idea. I just listened to him and
New York, do you?
I went to New York, and I loved living in New York. I loved being there as a 20-year-old.
Sure.
It was eye-opening. It was scary. It was challenging. It was, I met so many people so quickly. And when I think back on it, it was one of the best times of my life to be able to live in that city, then too, this was like, this was in 1990s, I'm trying to think, 1993.
So you're making a living as a model in New York City in 1993.
Well, I was kind of barely making a living. I was able to get, I also worked as a hostess at a fancy restaurant.
Classic.
But I did get a job with Vera Wang almost right away, which was cool. I modeled her wedding gowns at isn't it the Mark
Yeah,
Hotel?
the Mark Hotel, of course.
The Mark Hotel.
Yeah,
She
right
would have her trunk shows there.
Yep.
And that was good, solid work for me. That was great. And I also did the Geraldo show, and my friends back in North Carolina basically thought I'd made it once I was on the Geraldo show.
Of course. Fame and money. People don't realize fame and money are very, very different.
Yeah.
No, it's probably the money you were making then goes a long way in the Ozarks, but in New York City, it's like for lunch.
Yeah, exactly.
So how did that get into transition to acting after that?
Let's see. So when I was with my sister, actually before I left for New York, I was with my sister living in California, and she had taken me to some of her acting classes. And so I got a little taste of doing some acting classes. And I'd also gone on some commercial auditions. So I had a little bit of a taste of it there before I left for New York. And then when I was in New York, I was doing more modeling. And then I met a producer while I was living in New York. And then I moved back to LA and took a lot of acting classes. That's when I read a lot of scripts, though, because he was working for a pretty major production company. And so he would hand me the scripts to read, to give, for me to give my advice about them. And I probably learned the anatomy of a screenplay at that time, without really understanding what I was learning, just kind of picking it up and looking for a good story and to see whether or not I would turn the page and read more. And it was probably really a very informative time for me. Learned a lot.
It's honestly, it's amazing. It's super interesting. How did you get this resilience in you? Like what created, and what was that defining moment in your life? And I think we already alluded to it, that allowed you to be tough and allowed you to overcome obstacles. Modeling in New York is not easy. Having a acting career is not easy. Writing a book is not easy. Like, you kind of went to the most challenging things that you can do in life that aren't necessarily the most financially rewarding things that you can do in life. And just kind of took them head on. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you've done okay for yourself since, but But where did that moment come from that allowed you to be so resilient?
I think it's partly stupidity, to be honest. I think it's oblivious. I think you have to be oblivious to decide to do something, because if I knew, do you know that it took me 9 years to write my book?
It's way longer than I'm.
Doesn't seem like it so far.
Yeah, I mean,
They say that about marriage. If you knew what would happen before you got married, who would do it?
Exactly.
Having kids.
Having kids. Oh my
Get it.
God. Yeah.
My youngest are twins. I'm still getting over it.
You've
And they're
gotten over it.
24.
You're such a baby when it comes to this. Such a baby.
So you're going through it now.
Yeah, exactly. You're going
to put a few more there, and just stopping at 2 is like nothing. I wish I stopped at 2.
It is not for the faint of heart having kids.
2 would have been, actually, your life would have been way easier. The number 3 kicked the crap out of him. Number 4, easy.
That's what you say.
He's
number 4. Yeah.
Number 3, that's a real winner right there. But so stupidity. But it comes down to when things are challenging, instead of just quitting and going back to the chickens and going back to the goats and all the other stuff in the farm.
The goats.
Why'd you keep going?
I love this painting. I've
created an image of farming. I actually did, just before we go, I actually did live on a farm for a while. Yep. I lived in the north of Israel, and I worked on a farm for about a year and a half. I was in the West Bank. I worked on a farm in the West Bank. I was the poisoner for them. I shot the pesticides at the plants, and I was not very good at it and not very healthy. And then I worked in
it's not a good
chicken
job.
farms, goat farms, vegetable farms, everything. Like really everything.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was really cool.
I think it's good for anyone to do that kind of work.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I really do.
I took up cornfields.
Yeah.
Very proud of you.
Thank you.
But I don't know. I mean, I think that I would say probably where I learned to become very frustrated and not give up was in the horse world. My parents let me have a baby horse when I was 9 years old. Our mare, a female horse, had a baby when we moved to North Carolina. And my parents let me raise the baby. And there's nothing more frustrating than trying as a 9-year-old girl, as a kid, trying to raise a horse, because you're trying to teach them to not be afraid of everything, because horses are kind of, fearful animals because of how they grew up probably in the wild. Any sound, anything sudden, they're going to spook at. And babies especially, they're learning, that's what they're learning, is they don't have to be afraid of everything. And a horse that, ends up continually, being afraid isn't always a safe horse, to be around. But it's very frustrating, even just putting a halter on them, the thing that you put on their head, and a lead line, attaching that, and then trying to take them for a walk. Well, they basically just plant their feet and are immovable. And so you have to learn all these different things, like you make a lasso rope and you put it around their rump and kind of pull them along. And I don't know if you can imagine like a 9-10-year-old kid learning how to bring this young horse along. It was life-changing. And so, yeah, I think that definitely paved the way for being really frustrated and wanting to give up, but not giving up.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, the relationship with animals is so deep, and I can't give my son a horse right now in New York City.
I don't think he'll fit in your apartment.
But that just represents, that can, for me, it was horses. For somebody else, it's basketball. For another person,
yeah,
it's,
of course.
fishing. It's just do something, have something.
To have some responsibility is really amazing. And that's a huge responsibility. Christy, where can people find you? Where can people get connected to you? How can people get your book?
Well, I'm on all the social media platforms. Of course, Instagram, Facebook, primarily. And the book is available everywhere. It was a bestseller on Amazon in its first in its first few weeks out. So that was kind of cool. And it's also at Barnes and Noble, and ask at your local bookstore. Check out your local bookstore because I like to support them. If they don't have it, they can order it for you.
Oh, that's very cool. Christy, thank you so much for coming on. Thanks so much for sharing your insight. Thank you for writing the book, and we're excited to read your next book and
Thanks.
to see you on all the headlines again, but in a different avenue, and for really helping people get over some of the most challenging points in their lives. Instead of getting stuck, they're able to grow. So we really appreciate what you're doing. We love having people like you on, and thank you everybody for listening. We'll see you on the next one.